welcome back to So God Told You to Write a Book, Now What? I'm your host, Wendy Cerna, and we are jumping into the new year with the second half of Season 2. I hope you've enjoyed the interviews with the authors in the first 9 episodes in this season. I know I have. Wow, what a treasure trove of wisdom, experience, and practical tips. But don't turn off those listening ears just yet. There's more to come in the months ahead. So hop on board for the second half of Season 2 of So God Told You to Write a Book, Now What? I'm convinced you're going to find exactly what you need to help you obey the call of God on your life to create the book He has given you to create. Hey, if the author and finisher of all things told you to write a book, He believes that you can. And so do I. So come on, let's write. Hello, authors, and welcome back to So God Told You to Write a Book, Now What? I'm your host, Wendy Cerna, and we are on episode 11 of Season 2. And today's episode, the interview, the author is me. I think I told you at the beginning of the season that I was in the midst of getting my own book up and published, and it is finally out. The Sabotage Scroll is now available in ebook and paperback, and I have finished the audiobook version as well. So it's finally time to launch my own novel. Today, I'm going to talk about some of that process, but I thought I'd start with a little bit of review of the year that we've already had. I have had so much fun interviewing all of my fellow Christian authors, and I've learned so much from each and every one of them. The other day, I got an email from a fellow writer from NCWA, shout out to Cindy Aurora, and she was telling me that she really is not a podcast listener, but she has listened to this podcast because she knows so many of these authors, and she's really enjoyed getting to hear the backstories, which we don't always have time to do when we're at meetings or whatever. But she was also telling me some of the very particular items that she has picked up and implemented into her own writing process because of listening to some of these episodes. So I thought I'd go back and review, what have I taken away from these individual interviews that I've done? And let me tell you, there's a lot that I've taken away from them. Some of them are very personal things, inspirational things, but some are really practical things that I've implemented in my own practices as well. So I was thinking, let's just go down and do a little quick review. Georgia Morris, episode number 1 of Season 2, and her beautiful memoir, Unfailing Love. And I think the thing that I take away mostly from Georgia is just the courage that she has to go back and look at the past and write about the past in order to bring light and freedom to others who've walked through really difficult marriage circumstances and come out the other side with great grace and great wisdom and with a beautiful life. So I really appreciate that with Georgia, but also just the way you have to navigate writing a memoir because a lot of the people that she has in her story are still alive and very much impacted by the things that have happened in her life. So writing a memoir, learning how to do that. And then in episode 2, it was Sonia Anderson in her beautiful book, children's book, A Christmas Wish for Little Dollahorse, which I sent to one of my great nieces in Minnesota. But I think with Sonia, one of the things that I took away was just permission to write in different genres. Yes, she's written this beautiful children's book. She's also written a middle grade novel, a devotional article. She wrote a historical picture book with her husband. And that was very encouraging to me to say, okay, you might thrive in one genre, but feel free to try some others. And also learning about the traditional publishing route, which I'm not particularly aware of, and learning all the tenacity that is required and all the God moments she had in just acquiring agents and working through offers and contracts and publishers. That was very educational for me. Episode 3, Susie Crosby, another beautiful children's book, Where is Sheep 100? This is one that Cindy Aurora said that she took a particular lesson from Susie had talked about having an intercessory prayer group that supports her in her writing, and some of the strategies that she has implemented and used to keep that prayer group informed and vital and working both for them and for her. And that was a very key thing that I also really appreciated from Susie. In episode 4, we heard from Tina Gollings on her cyberpunk anthology, The Eon City Burnout. First of all, I learned I kind of really love cyberpunk. Who knew? Not me. But the whole way they created the book, opened up a whole world of collaboration and what that world looks like when you are working with 9 different authors to build a realm and build a world, but also give each other permission to really run with the ideas that you get from that world, and then sewing them all together in this very cohesive and wonderful anthology. That was really fun. And then we heard from Teresa Haynes in her book, The Queen's Priest, which is historical fiction, beautifully written book about Tudor England. And I think one of the things I grabbed from that was just, the fun of doing research, okay, got to go to the Tower of London and maybe the British Library and some of those places that are just essential when writing about Tudor England. But also that I think it's very cool that this historical fiction is fiction that is directly derived from her family history. And that's a very cool thing. I think that more of us could look at and then bringing that sort of fabled, almost legendary life into a very real human existence of the conundrums of the times that he lived in, and deciding really to fly in the face of King Henry VIII and live for King Jesus. I love that. In episode 6, we heard from Anne Harrison and her beautiful book, Praying Through the Seasons, which is a devotional. And of course, when you talk to Anne Harrison, you have to think, what excuse do I have? I got no excuse. Here she is, born blind, and is thriving in her writing, but also as an editor. But I also learned from Anne that she's very connected with a bunch of, maybe not a bunch, but several writing communities, and seeing the way that she takes full advantage of all those communities have to offer, and all the technologies that she implements just to be able to do what she feels called to do in writing. Episode 7, of course, we had Val Barshaw and her book, Surviving the Hospital, 6 Secrets Every Patient Should Know. And her passion was really inspiring to me, this medical advocacy that came out of very much her own life and her own trials and pains and difficulties, 35 years, walking through a heart transplant situation with her husband, taking all of that and melting it down into 6 secrets every patient should know. All of the experience she has, and making that available to people who, going into the hospital is a stressful time as it is, but then to know what to do and how to make the most of it and come out the other side is really a very wonderful thing to have in a very small package that is very readable, very accessible, and very practical. And I loved her passion. I still love her passion for that. In episode 8, I got to meet Heidi Gray McGill, an author I'd never met before, but we sure had a great time getting to know each other. And her book, which was a historical romance, A Place to Belong. Again, so part of this joy of being the host of this is I get to read all these books. Many of them are not the genre that I would just pick up if I'm just picking up things to read in my own preferences. But finding that I'm really enjoying some of these genres that are not my normal go-to. And this is one of them, historical romance. Romance in general is not my go-to. I don't know why. It's fun and wonderful and affects the heart. Maybe that's why. I don't know. Anyway, I loved with Heidi that she shared some of her writing craft library. She has this library of books that are her go-to to go back and revisit and keep mining from those people who have gone before and learned really the craft of writing. And the way she shared, there's a whole list of them. If you go on the show notes for episode 8 with Heidi Gray McGill, I went and bought some myself after talking to her. I was also really inspired with Heidi about the way that she has entered so many contests. I've never done that before, and it was great to hear the whys of that and the hows of that. And by golly, I've entered a few contests since then. We'll see what comes of it. But it was a very interesting thing to learn how to do. And then, of course, we had in episode 9, Steve Brock, Branding Something Beautiful, a branding workbook for writers, artists, and other creatives. And one of the things that really struck me with him was this whole idea of finding delight in marketing. There's a thought for you. Finding delight in marketing, but finding the things that delight you and then sharing those with your readers and making it a little bit more personal experience for those who are following you and really getting to know you as a person, but making that a delightful experience. That's a very different way to approach marketing. And I had some aha moments going through his workbook, which I'm still working through, by the way, but those aha moments, like when he had you listing your all-time favorite movies, 5 of them, and listing your all-time favorite books, 5 of them, and then going back and looking at what do they have in common? Like, what's the theme of those that is so attractive to you that you keep going back to it? And I was like, I don't know, they all seem like really divergent sort of books and movies. I don't know what they could possibly have in common. But then I go back and look and I realize, oh, actually, they're all about, every one of them was about like ordinary people who find themselves in extraordinary circumstances, usually very difficult circumstances, and then watching them overcome those circumstances. Bam, light bulb moment for me. It tends to be what I like to write about as well. Interesting. And then finally we had last week Kim Vandal and her young adult fiction fantasy Under Fire series. I'm on book 3 now. I'm really enjoying her young adult series. And eagerly anticipating book 4 coming out in the fall. A couple of things that I grabbed from that interview was her strategies with Kindle Unlimited. I have tended to just let my ebooks sort of ride on Kindle Unlimited and not really pull them off and put them in a broader distribution. I have done that with my audiobooks, like been very intentional about getting them into broader distribution and not just solely found in Audible. So you can find my audiobooks all over the place. But I'm like, oh, I like that idea of doing like 90-day stints on Kindle Unlimited and making that a marketing strategy, but then pulling them off and going to draft to digital to do the wider distribution. Thanks, Kim. But also I really loved talking about the different conferences and places she's gone to learn her craft and to keep it connected and learning. And the Realm Makers Conference I looked into right away and sort of intrigued about going to that. We'll see how that works out. But then their contests and resources, entered that contest too. Thanks to Kim Vandal. So all of these, I mean, those are just the 10 episodes we've had this year. But if you've grabbed something from any of these episodes and it sort of shifted the way that you're writing or marketing or thinking about it, I'd love to hear from you. You can go onto my website, wendyjocerna.com, and there's a place to just contact me and tell me what you're learning. I know these are changing me and the way that I approach my writing. I'm sure they're doing the same for some of you. Okay, so I guess I can't avoid it. Now we have to go into my books, and I've written down some of my own questions to myself to keep myself on track as I interview myself about the Sabotage Scroll, my latest book, book number 4. It's the 3rd book in what I'm now calling the St. Gerard collection. It's not a series, but it is 3 books that they're connected by a lot of crossover characters and location, geographical location. So there's no right or wrong way to read those books, like sequentially. But if I were you, I'd start with The Baby Catcher Gate. It definitely introduces you to the cast of characters who again show up in this latest book, The Sabotage Scroll. In The Baby Catcher Gate, Mel and Elle and Pearl are 12 years old. And in this latest book, they're 53. So there's a lot of water under the bridge since the baby catcher gate. But it's kind of fun to see what happens with these young girls and who they are as women in the year 2023, where the book is set. So what is the Sabotage Scroll all about? Well, let's start with that. It is the story of one woman, Dr. Elspeth Olsen Sinclair, who is a professor of ancient literature as well as a best-selling author. And she and her best buddies, Mel and Pearl, they've known each other since they were in elementary school, happened to go to Hawaii on a belated 50th birthday celebration weekend, and they find themselves on the top of Mauna Kea, which is about 14,000 feet elevation, the tallest peak on the Hawaiian Islands. And they take tours up there, to watch the sunset. I've been up there. I've seen it. And it's spectacular and it's wonderful. But it's also the place where there's a lot of the observatories are there because it's some of the best sky viewing anywhere on the planet out there in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. And so Dr. Elspeth, she convinces her two friends who are freezing because of the temperatures that are at the top of that mountain to stick around a little while and see not just the sunset, but watch the stars come out. And when they do, it's so amazing to see the Milky Way where there's more stars than there is sky. Stunning. And all three of them are gobsmacked into silence. But in that moment, Elspeth gets a download from a heavenly realm, she thinks, about a book. She knows it's a book because that's what she does, is write books. But it's a little different book. It's a little other and a little disturbing. She doesn't quite know what to do with it. But when she gets home, back to her place in Poughkeepsie, New York, she begins to write. And as she begins to write, her personal world begins to turn upside down in very personal ways. Her marriage, her extended family, her career, her past, all seem to be turned upside down and inside out, to the point that she winds up wondering, really, did this download come from heaven, or did it come from someplace else? Someplace dark, someplace that for reasons she doesn't quite understand is hell-bent on keeping her from getting this book published. So how long did it take me, this book, to start from start to finish? I was looking back on this and I realized I started writing in February of 2024. Didn't really know all the obstacles that year would throw across my path. But, that's probably just as well. Otherwise, we'd never start writing. I had a few big obstacles, not necessarily, challenges that year. One of them, which I knew was coming, but you don't always know how much it's going to require of you, is my daughter got married in the middle of that summer, which is a wonderful, beautiful thing. But a lot of your life gets put on hold to accomplish all that needs to be accomplished with that and enjoy that and fully give yourself to that. And then on the opposite end of the spectrum, in November of 2024, my dear mother passed away. And that, again, wasn't completely unexpected, as she had been in a journey with dementia for 7 or 8 years. But you don't know when it's going to end particularly. I was very, very grateful for the graciousness of God and the timing He allowed me to be by her side, along with a couple of my children and nephews and my brother. I don't live close to her. I live 1,700 miles away from her, but in His sovereignty, I flew in like 12 hours before she decided it was time to go. So I'm very grateful for that, but that also requires a lot of you to go through all the end of life things that need to be gone through, and memorial service, and also be really super present in all of that and allow the grief to happen and to work through those things. So, but I was thinking also, I think it was Kim Vandal was talking about this too, how you have like these big, I guess you'd call them interruptions to your writing in your life, but how these interruptions, they actually bring like new depth into your writing. And I found that to be very true as well. Of course, in the Sabotage Scroll, Dr. Elspeth Olsen Sinclair, who is the protagonist of the story, her own dear mother is dealing with dementia. And so I had a lot of very real experiences from which to draw, and real emotions, and all that goes along with watching a very bright and brilliant woman sort of disappear on you very slowly. Yeah, so 2024 was an interesting year to start writing. I actually handed off the manuscript to my editor about a year later in February of 2025. And my editor is Dory Harrell, who I connected with through Northwest Christian Writers. We had never worked together before on a manuscript. We had crossed paths in some other ways, but she plowed through a bunch of it, and then life handed her some big difficulties. And of course, having just walked through what I walked through, I'm like, you know what, Dory, you take all the time you need to be present and to get through those family difficulties yourself. So you realize in the writing process, there's a lot of waiting time, whether you're doing traditional publishing or self-publishing or hybrid publishing. When you are working with other people, there are lots of things that are out of your control. So utilizing the downtime, is that the right word? I don't know. But using the time when you're not writing, I use that time to connect with my cover designer, Sharon Marta, who I've worked on with, this is the third cover I've worked on with her. And it's really nice to have someone to go to that you've worked with before, and you have worked out a sort of language or methodology of communicating with each other and getting the ideas in your head into her head onto the page. And that's why I used that time. So by the time Dory got the manuscript back to me, I had a cover design all ready to rock and roll. And I do my own formatting, something I've picked up along the way. I don't know if it's a control issue or I just don't want to pay somebody else for something that I actually can do. And I also sort of enjoy having the autonomy to be able to say, this is how I want it to look on the page, whether that's font or margins or chapter headings or however it's going to look on the page. I do that myself. I did not send it to a proofreader this time. I probably should have. I just didn't want to go through another round of edits. Some of it just budget, but also maybe I got a little antsy to get it out. But here's what happened. So I got it printed and I gave it to some beta readers and I read it through it myself. And so one of the beauties of self-publishing is that, okay, I found a handful of little flubs, and nothing massive or big, but things that are a little embarrassing they are on the page, that I could go right back in and edit the manuscript myself and upload it again and get out a very fresh, clean version, which is now available. But maybe should have spent the money and time on a proofreader. The things you learn along the way. So the paperback and the ebook actually came out in October of 2025. And then I jumped right into recording the audiobook, which is a long and tedious process. It also is sort of my sweet spot. As you can tell, maybe I like to talk into a microphone. But having the freedom to read my own stuff with the accents and imaginations of what these characters actually sound like coming through my own voice, that's kind of fun for me. Yes, it's a lot of work. It takes a lot of hours. It's just recording and then editing and plus it's 420-page novel with a wide cast of characters. But that I got cranked out shortly before Christmas of 2025. I only put it up on Audible to begin with. Their review process was longer than normal, maybe because it was right in the middle of the holiday season. So it didn't get up and out until right after New Year's. But then, because I've been around this mountain once before, I went and listened to all, 14 hours and 16 minutes of the audiobook version myself. And because in the past, I've put the books out on wide distribution and then found out someone would say, hey, there's a little weird thing that happens on the end of chapter 24. Did you mean to do I'd go back and go, oh my goodness, a little embarrassing that I would mess up in some of my editing. So I decided I'm going to listen to it myself before I put it out into broader distribution. And I did. And I found one of those little flubs in the end of chapter 13. But again, the beauty of self-publishing, I went back right away, fixed it, and uploaded again, fresh and new and clean. And then I went back and put it into the broader distribution through Voices by In Audio and Authors Republic, two of the other audiobook brokerages that you can upload your stuff to, and they take a small percentage of your royalties, but then they send it out to a gazillion different audiobook platforms, a lot of which are library-based, which tickles me that people can go to the library and check that out because I'm a library fan. So all said and done, I started in February of 2024, and by January of 2026, everything is up and running. So it took basically 2 years from inception to finish line. Not my fastest book, certainly not my slowest either. It just is the season of life I was in and the things that were required to get this book done. I did completely self-publish this book this time. I have gone through hybrid publishing I did with Solbakken. I just decided that because I've been around the mountain a few times and I have intentionally connected with a broader writing community and resources, and I have some of these resources now available to me, I didn't need to pay someone else to find those for me, if that makes sense. So my editor and my cover designer are relationship built, and I work directly with them, and they're professionals and do a beautiful job. And then, like I said, I do my own formatting, and that's basically what you need to do. I think there are some hybrid publishers will offer you some marketing packages too that they have resources for that are good. I'm not saying hybrid publishing is not the way to go. I'm just saying for me, where I am right now, the self-publishing road just seemed to be the right path for this book. So that's what I did. So then, let's see. How did I hear from God to write this particular book? Yes, indeed. Why write this book? It wasn't like Baby Catcher where I got literally a word out of heaven to write the book. But like my other two books, this one started with one of those big what ifs and a big thought that I couldn't quite wrap my brain around. Like, what if that's really possible? Like, what are the ramifications? If that's true, then what? And it sort of led me into places that maybe I wasn't super excited about going. My other books all have like a heavenly point of view that I explore the heavenly realms and weave that into the earthly realms. This particular book, on the other hand, has led me into the dark realms. And I can't say that I was particularly thrilled by that direction of discovery. In fact, I was quite reluctant to follow that narrative thread as it unfolded in my mind's eye. But, that's what was there. That was the thing that was percolating and brewing in my belly that needed to come up and be written. So what was the big what if? So I was in Tennessee with my friend Joy, and we like to bat around, deep theological, philosophical things that maybe we really don't have any business delving into, but, we go there. And the what if was, what if the fallen angels are ever and only the number that they were when they were cast out of heaven? They are not creative beings, nor can they procreate. So are they ever only and always that static number? And if so, are they feeling the pressure of the ever-expanding numbers of the sons of God? I mean, does there come a tipping point in the spiritual realm when humanity simply overwhelms the demonic with our sheer volume? Not to mention the exponential power that becomes available to us when we awaken to our true identities in Christ. So are Satan and all of his minions pedaling super hard as fast as they can to obliterate the human race by any means necessary in order to save their own skins. So we batted that around a number of different times, and then she finally said to me, well, you should write a book about that. I wasn't thrilled with the idea. But eventually you realize, no, you know what? If I'm going to get this out of my system, I'm going to have to process it through a book. So that's where it all began. Okay, here's another question I've asked others. Did I learn anything new about God or myself during this process? Well, certainly the reality of the spiritual battle became very evident early on with different manifestations and then some very personal losses and challenges, some of which seemed incredibly cruel and targeted to some of the most vulnerable places of my heart, and those things are a bit stunning. Early on, very early on, when I started to write, I was naming some names of powers and principalities, and as I'm typing, a picture flies off the wall behind me and crashes to the floor, breaks the glass in the frame. I was very startled and odd, like that picture had been there a long time on that wall, and then, weird. All right, I cleaned that up. The next day, I have a wooden cross hanging on that wall, and that comes off the wall and crashes down. And at that point, my husband walked into the room to check on something, and I said, well, here's something interesting that's going on here. I don't know quite what to think about it, but I think perhaps I need a little more prayer over this book than normal. That happened to me 4 or 5 times after that, and my books came off my shelves as well. Weird. Just weird. A little scary, a little stunning, but also very confirming of the fact that, I might just be stirring up a hornet's nest. In the book, I do have, like I alluded to, a point of view from the demonic characters, but I felt like I named them sort of ridiculous names. Scuttlebutt, Ratfink, Chit-Chat, and their big supervisors are General Malaise and Corporal Punishment, Martial Law, because I just felt like I didn't want to glorify them in any way. Like they are sort of dark terrorists and do harm, but the more I got involved in their flow of thinking, you realize that it's a very narcissistic, petty, childish realm in which, how do you have unity with a bunch of dark minions when they're all grasping for their own glory and their own ambitions and their own selfish conquests? And so that's how I wrote them out. But that being said, I realized that, the realm of darkness still has powers in the earthly realm that are very destructive. And I think the cruelty of the enemy towards us got to be very, very real. There are things I went through in this past year that I'm not going to talk about on a podcast. They're far too personal, and I don't really want to expose them to the masses, certainly. But they were, like I said, so personal and such a vulnerable place in my heart that it sent me reeling for a bit. But then I also was like, all right, you know what? It's on. It's on. If you're going to try to do that in my life, in my family, in my realm, it's on, because greater is he who is in me than he who is in the world. And so his attacks got to be sort of motivation to say, you know what, it's time to swing back, and I'm not going to be intimidated by your strategies. I think it was at this time that a verse from Hebrews 12 came up in my daily reading where it says, let us run with perseverance the race marked out for us. And as I was studying that, I looked at the original Greek for it, and that word for race isn't like a sprint. It's not a 50-yard dash. It's not even just a straight marathon. It's more like an obstacle course, like a place of contest, that it's not smooth sailing, that there are challenges to overcome in this race. But we're all made for our own race. And we are also made to be overcomers. So the spirit of power and love and the sound mind that resides in me is greater than the one who is trying to attack me and knock me off my game. I have a race to run. He's equipped me to do it. And by golly, let's do it. So that was a lesson more deeply ingrained into me as I wrote this book. Switching gears, next question. Do I have any great marketing tips? Like I said earlier, finding delight in marketing has been a challenge for me, but you learn new things along the way. I did approach this book quite differently than my other books. I think in the past I was just so relieved or thrilled to have a book done that as soon as it was available, I'd blast it out on my social media and do a book launch right away with the paperback, and then I'd do the ebook, and then eventually, months down the road, I'd get the audiobook done, and then sort of put that out there as well. Not a bad way to do it. I just felt very differently about this book. Like I recognized, like I just talked about, that there's serious warfare that was going on as I wrote this book because it was a book about warfare. I don't know why that should surprise me. I guess I wasn't surprised on some levels, but on other levels, I really was. So realizing that launching this book needed to be strategic warfare and not just reactionary warfare. Does that make sense? So like I said, the paperback came out in October, so I had some books printed, even with all their flubs, and I gave them to some advanced readers, and I asked them to read it, and I asked them to pray over it, and over me, and over the whatever happens with this book from here on out. So to start that way with prayer covering felt really important to, as I'm putting my baby in a basket out into the river of commerce and consumption and criticism, that this baby is bathed in prayerful purpose and destinations and impact for people's lives and hearts and minds, but also for protection just over me and my family felt like a very important thing to do. So right now is the time where it's time all of the various iterations are up and available, and it's time to put the baby in the basket and send her out into the river. Here's one thing I've always done with my books that I have found to give me like the most bang for my buck is on Goodreads, you can do giveaways. There's a couple different ways that you can do it, Kindle ebooks or paperbacks. I've chosen to do the ebooks because I can give away 100 ebooks for $100. $1 a book, that's pretty good. And you put your book up for giveaway, and you give a blurb and you put it in a genre and all that, and then people can sign up for it, and hundreds of people sign up, but only 100 of them will get the free Kindle edition. But a lot of them that even don't win the book wind up with the book on their want to read list. So that's good in and of itself, but then also that you get 100 new readers that I wouldn't find any other way. Granted, there is some diversity in the readers that you get, but when you put it up on the giveaways, you do put a genre, you put up a blurb, and so the people that sign up to win it, tend to be people who want to read that kind of book. So it works pretty good. I have gotten some good ratings and some good reviews from that promotional tool. You can look into it on Goodreads, giveaways if you've got your books up there, and look into the different methods. Like I chose the $100 100 books deal. You can spend more and get more, like get promoted to higher on different lists or whatever. I just decided this was the way. This was the best way for me to do it. I've done it before. It works well. And this time I got more requests than I ever have had for the free book. So there's my big marketing tip. Put it in your pocket. Use it if you want to, or don't. That's all right. Let's see. Another question. Was there any particular scriptures that helped as I wrote this book? Well, I think the one underlying motivating scripture for this book for me is in Proverbs 24, verses 11 and 12. And it says this: rescue those being led away to death, and hold back those staggering toward slaughter. If you say, but we knew nothing about this, does not he who weighs the heart perceive it? Does not he who guards your life know it? Will he not repay everyone according to what they have done? Writing the Sabotage Scroll has taken a particular level of courage that I don't really possess naturally. I once heard a pastor say that courage and boldness are really just love in action. There are culturally very hot topics that are woven into the narrative of this book. Many people who might read them will not appreciate the approach that I have to them. Some might be downright angry with the way that I expose or include these issues as being hellish devices to kill, steal, and destroy. So, why do it? Why stick your head above the foxhole? Well, partly because of verses like this in Proverbs 24, because it says I'm responsible to carry the banner of truth and grace in the generation in which I live. Because if I don't do it, how small is my compassion for those whose lives are being destroyed and led away to slaughter? I mean, the verse that directly precedes the ones that I just read says, if you show yourself lacking courage in the day of distress, your strength is meager. I guess maybe I'm finding myself attempting to become the type of ordinary hero that I root for in all of my favorite books and movies. But perhaps this is my assignment in my generation to face, the cultural winds of adversity and not shrink back. Why? Because lives are at stake and destinies are on the line, and we have an enemy on our years on the planet who does not want us to be the light of the world that we have been designed to be. And he knows the power of our lives to transform society sometimes better than we do. I was recently reading some quotes by Harriet Beecher Stowe, the author of Uncle Tom's Cabin, a novel that was written, I think, in 1851. She has a lot of great quotes. And she was a woman who wrote, more than 30 books, lots and lots of articles, and most of them were not fiction, but there were some that were. But obviously Uncle Tom's Cabin was the most renowned. But she wrote in the 1850s, I feel now that the time has come when even a woman or a child who can speak a word for freedom and humanity is bound to speak. I hope every woman who can write will not be silent. So there you go. Trying to be like Harriet Beecher Stowe. At least allowing her courage to perhaps inspire my own. She also said once, there is more done with pens than with swords. So I guess this is my way to fight the battles that are ours to fight in the generation in which we currently live. I'm not a politician. I'm not a soldier. I'm an author. And this is my way to contribute to, the realm of light, fighting back against the darkness. Do I have any advice to give new authors? Well, I think, especially in the writing of the Sabotage Scroll, the thing that I would say to new authors is don't let the tides of your life, which are going to ebb and flow, regardless if you're writing or not, but don't let them dissuade your determination to complete the assignment that you've been given to write the book that you've been given to write. Because sometimes on the other side of your long obedience is a world in need of what you have to say. So keep your eyes on the impact. Whether it's, it's not really ours to say whether it's a few lives or a million lives. I don't know. And we certainly don't know, we're still reading Uncle Tom's Cabin, written in 1851. And the ripples of that novel still going out all those years later, you don't know. You don't know the ripples of the long-term effects of your book and the impact that it might have in days to come, or where it might go and who might read it. Harriet Beecher Stowe, she was invited to the White House in 1862 to meet President Abraham Lincoln. And it is said that when he greeted her, he looked down from his towering heights to her diminutive frame and said, Oh, so you're the little woman who wrote the book that started this great war. The war, of course, was the Civil War, and the book, a novel. Not a treatise, or a manifesto, or a sermon, but a novel. Turn the world upside down. So, that's why I do what I do. Maybe it won't turn the whole world upside down. It might turn one or two people's worlds upside down. I don't know. My job is just to write it and get it out there. So it's out there. The Sabotage Scroll is available on Kindle, on paperback, and in audiobook. I believe it's on Kindle Unlimited until the middle of March, and then it will go in broader distribution. So if you like it one way or the other, you can grab it on Kindle Unlimited until the middle of March, and then you'll be able to find it on other platforms. So that's the story behind the Sabotage Scroll. I sure love and appreciate you. I hope you grab something from this episode that will be helpful to you in the journey that you're in. Blessings and peace. Shalom, shalom.